thing is illegal to begin with. You all should be citizen arrested for what you're doing. Shame on you aiding and abetting child trafficking.
The fact is that we're on a good path at the border under leadership of President Biden. It's about three things. It's about restructuring how we do what is happening there, because we were in a very bad situation under the Trump administration.
Earlier today, the Texas Health and Human Services Commission and the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services separately received tips that allege child abuse and neglect at the federal government's child migrant facility at the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio behind me. These problems are a byproduct of President Biden's open border policies.
Hey, we need the police over here. They got a bunch of kids without their car seats. You're violating Texas law.
Who is this right here?
Hey,
you have no comments.
You got those children in there illegally.
You're about to run a human being over. Hey,
you got those children in there.
Who are you?
You got those smuggled children illegally.
Why should you be alarmed about the crisis on the United States southern border? Well, because history is repeating itself on purpose.
Yesterday, we watched literally hundreds of illegal migrants crossing the border and turning themselves into the Border Patrol. Groups in the company of children who were under 7 had their basic biometric information taken down and then dispatched to bus stations to continue into the United States.
We are in a battle for the very definition of who we are as a nation. Who are we? That is the question that our culture, our nation right now is asking. And people need to begin to rise up and begin to speak out and push back against the lunacy and the illogic that is being used right now to divide us.
The United States looks just like ancient Rome did in its final days. Of course, Rome didn't fall in a day, but when it finally received its death blow in 476 AD, its world power status had declined due to several corrosive reasons. Germanic tribes had beaten Roman forces into submission as Rome had overextended its military and its defense budget. Government corruption had reached epic proportions, and slave labor dried up, forcing the complacent, unskilled Romans to fend for themselves. Sound familiar?
Not many of us say to our sons and daughters, I'm hoping the day will come when you decide to go and pick fruit for a living. Hardly ever hear that.
One of the most often made arguments with regard to immigration is that they only do jobs that Americans don't want. But in a recent analysis, we actually looked at all 474 occupations as defined by the Department of Commerce and found that there were only 6 that were majority immigrant, and those jobs only account for about 1% of the U.S. workforce.
But the final knife in Rome's back was that it lost its identity. Most importantly, Rome allowed the barbarian hordes to settle within its borders, which eventually led to an uprising, putting an end to the identity of a 1,000-year-old world power civilization. Fast forward to 2021, and the United Nations has already decided for every citizen in the United States that over the next 50 years, you will need to be replaced by a foreign population.
As you know, the Secretary General has been concerned about this for a long time, and I'm very pleased that he's launched this program against xenophobia. If all of the migrants, recently arrived migrants in New York City, were to form a city, they'd probably be the 3rd or 4th largest city in the United States.
As it reads from the United Nations' own website on replacement migration, United Nations projections indicate that over the next 50 years, the populations of virtually all countries will face population decline and population aging. The report considers replacement migration for 8 low-fertility countries: France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Republic of Korea, Russian Federation, United Kingdom, and the United States. Ask yourself, do we really need the United Nations' help? During the baby boom following World War II, nearly 80 million babies were born, and for some reason we can't do that again?
Your child's school nearly doubled its enrollment.
The result? Classroom shortage.
There weren't enough classrooms and desks.
They gave my boy half a seat.
To give every student some kind of education, many schools had resorted to teaching kids in shifts.
Not too bad.
Students sat at their desks for just 2 hours and then went home.
Instead, bumbling, stumbling Joe Biden would have us all replaced in favor of a New World Order autocracy of which he is an acolyte and a puppet.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
His deceptive intentions are so transparent, a 5-year-old can read between the lines.
I think this generation can be marked by the competition between democracies and autocracies, because the world is changing so rapidly. The autocrats are betting on democracy not being able to generate the kind of unity needed to make decisions to get in that race.
The crisis on the border is brutally real. As the numbers stand, by the end of 2021, the death toll in illegal immigrants who died trying to cross the border and the American citizens who will die as a result of illegal immigrants oblivious to our laws will rise, pushing an already record-high nationwide homicide rate over the cliff. And there are even more dire implications than that.
The concern at all points in time is, who are we not apprehending? Right. If they, as we know, and we've heard from Border Patrol as we've been down here, that every day you see swells of people coming in to surrender to Border Patrol, and they know that at the same time those are decoy operations because others are coming in another location. So if we've been fortunate enough to apprehend now 6, by my count, persons whose names are on the terrorist watch list, how many have we not apprehended? Particularly if that's where they're devoting their effort, those would be the high-value people they want to get in.
Recently, Reuters reported Yemen's Houthi forces fired drones and missiles at the heart of Saudi Arabia's oil industry. The current flood of Yemeni terrorist gotaways could repeat the very same hell on earth that we witnessed during the Persian Gulf War on the state of Texas, which would send oil prices skyrocketing and our energy grid dangerously vulnerable. As Biden floods the border with potential criminals while simultaneously unveiling new gun restrictions and nominating a top gun control advocate to head the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives,
I want to see a national red flag law.
While waving his monstrous $2+ trillion Green New Deal infrastructure Trojan horse as America crawls out of a pandemic that could eventually wipe out 9 million small businesses, you can't help but conclude that America is being set up for annihilation. John Bound reporting.